Alright, so this is going to be my review of Avengers, The Impossible City. This is the first volume in the start of the Jed MacKay run of the Avengers. Basically, right after Jason Aaron has left his like over 10-year Avengers run and then moved on to do, stuff at DC, Jed MacKay was basically tasked with writing the Avengers. Which, yeah, after a long run, perfect guy to write, because like I said before, not too long ago, Jed MacKay is a writer that I've really come to enjoy. I've been really loving, especially his Moon Knight book, and like I said before, a couple weeks ago, I talked about like how much I loved his Doctor Strange comic. His Doctor Strange series. So this was pretty cool to get. This came from my good friend Chris, aka the Mount Vernon Kid. Chris, thank you once again. And yeah, so let's get into it. So the comic basically, stupid fucking chair. The comic basically follows the reformation of the Avengers. More or less, the Avengers were basically like, yeah, we're all done here. But now Carol has been tasked by Tony to reform the Avengers. And she puts... so now Carol is the leader of this incarnation of the Avengers. This also leads to her gathering together Iron Man, Thor, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Sam Wilson, Captain America, and Black Panther. So the seven of them are basically the new incarnation of the Avengers, and just in time too, because they went to go in a battle with Terminus, which is always cool. He's always a villain that's like, he's a big threat, but like no one uses him for anything. So it is kind of see that he is treated like he is used as an Avengers villain, but only when you need it like a big guy and you can't use Galactus. So Terminus is the first issue, but it's not Terminus who's the big villain here. You see, Carol encounters Kang the Conqueror, who is on the run from a villain, from a version of another time-traveling character named Meridian and his Knights. And Meridian nearly kills Kang. They actually cover it in here with the Timeless one-shot, which acts as like the prequel to MacKay's Avengers comic. But I digress. So, Kang warns the Avengers of these things called the Tribulations. So the Tribulations, he doesn't know he knows a few of them, but he doesn't know what will come for what order they'll come in. But he knows of the first tribulation that's coming, and it's the Impossible City. What is the Impossible City, you ask? Well, let's see. The Impossible City is a giant sentient spaceship city that is run by the Ashen Combine. Who's the Ashen Combine? Let's see. The Ashen Combine are a group of renegade characters who have been going around killing, who are basically city slayers. What is a city slayer? Well, let's see. A city slayer is basically these guys who go around to major cities and kill everyone in those major cities and moves on to another world. How are the Avengers going to stop them? Well, let's see. They're gonna do what they do best. Avengers assemble and kick ass. Anyway, this comic is a great introduction to the new storyline. I really like that it's an Avengers level threat that they encounter, and it also is kind of funny that just like in Jason Aaron's Avengers comic, that it deals with the first volume. At the end of it, they get a new base, which was that giant celestial. In here, it's the same thing of the Avengers get a new base. But yeah. This actually feels a lot like a Justice League book. I'm gonna be and I know what you're thinking. Well, Avengers and Justice League and Marvel and DC, they meet up. They kind of have writers that cross over all the time, and ideas are kind of mixed in those bags. That's true, but this really this storyline feels like an Avengers comic. You have 7 members, like in your typical Justice League comic. It's usually 7 to ape off of Grant Morrison's run, but also it feels like the Ashen Combine, the City Slayers, are even the Impossible City itself really does feel like a threat from the Justice League. They feel like something you would see in a DC comic. They really do feel like it's a DC comic event, DC comic storyline. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I'm really not. I'm just saying, it just feels like a Justice League book. You could literally take this team, switch it around, Like, instead you would have instead of the Avengers, you just have the Justice League, and it would actually be the same kind of outcome. So the Ashen Combine are these group of villains who have taken over the Impossible City, who actually is like a sentient city who has been was used by a group of heroes, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be revealed that it belonged to Meridian and his knights, because they're technically heroes. But yeah, the Impossible City is like also a character who is, you know, he hates the Ashen Combine, but there's nothing the city can do because it's enslaved by it. And yeah, the comic really does a good job of, you know, showcasing the Avengers and how they counteract with the Ashen Combine. It's almost like in some anime arcs where everyone splits off to fight various enemies, like in a one-on-one fight. It's like that. Like, if you guys remember, like in Yu Yu Hakusho or Outlaw Star or Naruto, there's always like an arc where you have the big team of heroes going to fight the villains, but then the villain, like, there's a villain team, and one by one each hero like breaks off to fight that one villain in a one-on-one fight. It's like that. Like, it's exactly like that. There is meanwhile, while Carol and most of the Avengers fight the Ashen Combine, T'Challa and Sam have to like work past their differences, because in the Jackson Lanning and Colin Kelly storyline for what they did with Captain America, where they did 2 books, one focusing on Sam, the other focusing on Steve, they had some, shall we say, falling out. I haven't read that book, but as of this recording, Chris did tell me that's the Captain America Symbol of Truth is the next book he's sending. So yeah, so they have to work they have to work together in order to, you know, stop the Impossible City, but eventually free it. Meanwhile, the other Avengers have to like counteract each of the other characters. You have Thor, who takes on this thing called the Alabaster Alabaster Idol, who grows stronger by people worshipping it, and it attacks the Vatican. You have this thing called the City Smith, who Iron Man battles. You have this thing called the Dead, which Wanda fights. You have another who is, I cannot pronounce her name, but it's this machine woman who desires, you know, control and love and adoration. Vision battles her, and Carol battles another guy called Lord Emu, who is just entropy and decay. It's a cool story. Like, I really like how it bounces between the main fight and all that. It's a pretty good, solid opening to the series. It's a really great It's a really great opener to this series. And it's a solid, if you like skipped on Jason Aaron's Avengers, which I get was mediocre at best, this is a very solid start. Like, this is, if you want to get into like the Avengers books but didn't want to get into whatever the hell Jason Aaron was doing, here you go. Here is your intro. And yeah, the only thing that kind of bothers me is that, and it's not Jed McKay's fault. I understand, like, he really does pay attention to detail, because while the Avengers have these costumes in the first issue, they actually switch midway through the book, like, to the costumes they have in other books. So McKay, it isn't like with Jason Aaron, where he was just kind of writing whatever and barely used the costumes that the characters were wearing at the time of those storylines in their own books. So McKay, this is again what I love about McKay, is that he really understands continuity and detail. So he does, like, even though it's kind of like almost like a neck break pace, the Avengers are wearing the costumes they're wearing in their own books, and he does kind of pay attention. He does very much pay attention to what's going on in those other books. So yeah, like I said, this is if you want to get into an Avengers book but haven't in a while, here you go. It's a great start to a new storyline, and is a solid. It's a solid story. Like I said, it does feel like a Justice League book, but then again, you can argue that that Marvel and DC have always kind of aped off each other in terms of storylines. Alright, so there you go. That is my review for Avengers The Impossible City. Once again, I'd like to thank my good friend Chris, aka the Mount Vernon Kid. Chris, thank you once again for the comic as well as the other books. We're almost done. According to Chris, we are almost done with the Marvel haul. There's 2 books left in that haul, and then I gotta read and review all those. But anyway, however, if you've read Avengers Volume 1 by Jed MacKay, what did you guys think of it? Comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.